November 18th, 1985. The day the NFL died for exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. What happened in those 4.5 minutes didn't just change one game or one season. It rewrote the rules of what we thought was possible in professional football. Picture this. 23-year-old Joe Theismann drops back in the pocket. It's a routine flea flicker against the Giants on Monday Night Football. 85 million Americans are watching. In 3 seconds, they'll witness something so brutal that ABC will refuse to show the replay for the rest of the broadcast. The compound fracture heard around the world didn't just end a career. It shattered the illusion that our football heroes were invincible. Lawrence Taylor, the man who delivered the hit, immediately waved for medical help. LT, who terrorized quarterbacks for years, was physically sick on the field. "I heard it snap," he'd later say. "I knew right away his career was over." But here's what made November 18th, 1985, truly the darkest day in NFL history. It wasn't just about one devastating injury. That same afternoon, 3 other career-ending injuries occurred across different games. Chicago's Jim McMahon took a cheap shot that would plague him for years. In Green Bay, a rookie defensive back named Mark Lee suffered a spinal injury that left him paralyzed from the waist down. The league had no concussion protocols, no independent neurologists. Players shot up with painkillers and sent back onto the field regularly. What happened that Monday night was simply the most visible example of a league that had prioritized entertainment over player safety for decades. By midnight, 4 families received phone calls that would change their lives forever. But the real nightmare was just beginning, because what the NFL did next would make this dark day even darker. The cover-up started at 11:47 p.m. that same night. While families were still in hospital waiting rooms, NFL Commissioner Pete Rozelle was on a conference call with team owners, network executives, and the league's newly hired crisis management firm. The recording of that call, leaked in 2019, reveals a chilling conversation about controlling the narrative and protecting the product. Here's what they decided. Minimize the injuries, emphasize the warrior mentality of players, and whatever you do, don't let this become a pattern story. Within hours, league-approved doctors were giving interviews downplaying the severity of the injuries. McMahon's concussion was called a minor bell ringer. Lee's spinal injury was described as temporary nerve compression. Even Theismann's grotesque leg break was spun as a freak accident that had nothing to do with player safety. The most damning evidence came from internal memos discovered during later litigation. The NFL's Medical Advisory Board had recommended implementing mandatory neurological evaluations after head injuries just 6 months before November 18th. The owners voted it down 28-0, citing costs and competitive integrity concerns. Translation: they were worried players might fake injuries to get easier neurological tests and avoid playing hurt. Meanwhile, the players were kept completely in the dark. Team doctors were instructed to use terms like minor trauma and temporary setbacks when discussing injuries with players and families. Pain medication distributions increased 340% across all teams in the weeks following November 18th. But the league's most sinister move was still coming. What they did to silence the injured players would haunt the NFL for the next 3 decades. And it started with a knock on Joe Theismann's hospital room door at 2 a.m. That 2 a.m. visit wasn't from a doctor or family member. It was NFL Security Chief Warren Welsh, carrying a briefcase and what witnesses later described as hush money contracts. The league had activated what internal documents called Protocol 7, a systematic campaign to buy the silence of injured players before they could speak to media or hire lawyers. Welsh's briefcase contained 4 identical contracts. Sign this. Receive immediate payment for medical expenses and family hardship, but agree to never discuss the circumstances of your injury publicly. Joe Theismann, heavily medicated and facing months of rehabilitation, was presented with a $847,000 check. Mark Lee's family, desperate to cover mounting medical bills for his paralysis treatment, received $1.2 million. The catch? A 20-year non-disclosure agreement with penalties exceeding $50 million for violations. What makes this even more disturbing is that the NFL had used Protocol 7 before. League accountants revealed that between 1978 and 1985, the NFL had paid out over $23 million in these secret settlements to 127 different players. Former Raiders linebacker Phil Villapiano broke his NDA in 2021, describing how he was visited in the hospital after a career-ending neck injury in 1983. They made it clear this was my only option. Take the money and disappear, or fight the league's lawyers for decades while my family went bankrupt. The psychological manipulation was calculated and cruel. Welsh would arrive when players were at their most vulnerable, drugged, scared, and facing uncertain futures. He'd emphasize how fighting the league would destroy their reputations and leave their families with nothing. But one player refused to sign, and his decision would eventually bring down this entire corrupt system, though it would take nearly 15 years and cost him everything. That player was Jim McMahon. While Theismann, Lee, and the fourth injured player from that day quietly signed their NDAs, McMahon did something that shocked even his own teammates. He called a press conference from his hospital bed and told Welsh to take that blood money and shove it. What happened next reads like a mafia playbook. Within 48 hours, McMahon's endorsement deals mysteriously disappeared. Coca-Cola, who had signed him to a $2.3 million contract just months earlier, suddenly cited conduct detrimental clauses and terminated the deal. Nike followed suit. His agent, Steve Zucker, received calls warning him that representing McMahon would be career suicide in NFL circles. The league's retaliation campaign was ruthless and coordinated. Team doctors began questioning McMahon's toughness in medical reports. Coaches leaked stories about his attitude problems to sports writers. The NFL's media partners ran pieces suggesting McMahon was exaggerating his injuries for attention. ESPN's Chris Berman, who rarely took controversial stances, was pressured to call McMahon a distraction on SportsCenter. Most devastating of all, the league used its influence to sabotage McMahon's career directly. Internal emails later revealed that Commissioner Rozelle personally contacted Bears owner Mike McCaskey, suggesting McMahon's instability made him a liability. Other teams received similar warnings through back channels. When McMahon tried to sign with Green Bay in 1987, Packers executives received what they described as unofficial guidance that signing McMahon would hurt their relationship with league headquarters. The message was crystal clear. Cross the NFL's medical cover-up operation, and we'll destroy everything you've worked for. But McMahon had something the league didn't count on, a paper trail that would eventually expose their entire conspiracy. But McMahon wasn't the only one digging for evidence. Unknown to the NFL, a young investigative journalist named Sarah Chen at the Washington Post had been quietly building her own case file since 1983. Chen had noticed a disturbing pattern: career-ending injuries followed by immediate financial settlements and complete media silence from the players involved. Her breakthrough came from an unlikely source, a janitor at NFL headquarters named Marcus Williams. Williams had been emptying trash bins in the executive offices for 12 years, and he'd started keeping copies of documents that seemed important. On December 3, 1985, just 2 weeks after the November 18th incident, Williams handed Chen a manila envelope containing photocopies of internal NFL medical reports dating back to 1979. The documents were explosive. They showed the league had been tracking what they internally called catastrophic injury incidents and their financial settlements in a database codenamed Project Endzone. The files revealed that the NFL knew certain playing surfaces increased injury risk by 67%, that specific helmet models failed safety standards, and that team doctors were routinely pressured to clear players with obvious concussion symptoms. Most damaging of all was a memo from NFL medical consultant Dr. Harrison Ellis, dated March 15, 1985, 8 months before the November 18th disaster. Ellis warned that without immediate safety reforms, the league was statistically certain to experience multiple simultaneous catastrophic injuries within the next calendar year. His recommendations included mandatory concussion protocols, improved field conditions, and independent medical evaluations. The memo was stamped, "Rejected financial impact unacceptable." Chen spent months verifying the documents with medical experts and former players. But when she finally published her exposé in February 1986, The NFL's response would make their previous cover-up attempts look like child's play. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click on the screen for more.